All right. We are live. Dr. Amy Lee, Colleen, welcome to the Future of Fitness. It's a pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're going to cover some really interesting stuff for the industry. I mean, you guys are at a kind of a convergence of, aesthetics, longevity, health span, and with all of the science coming out and all of the trends and consumer demand in this particular area, it's a really good time to be talking about these things and what you guys are doing. So we're going to get right into it and hear what you guys are up to at bluSONIL. But let's start with some introductions first. Colleen, if you want to kick us off, and then we'll get to Dr. Amy Lee, and then we'll get into the meat of it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eric. So I'm Colleen Lewis. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called bluSONIL. bluSONIL sits at the intersection of longevity, wellness, and regenerative aesthetics, all under one roof. And for the past 5 years, I've spent my career in the world of aesthetics and the world of wellness and metabolic health. Prior to that, for 30 years, I worked in the world of best-in-class businesses, started my career in the cosmetics industry, and then I spent about a decade in cosmetics, about a decade in the world of luxury specialty apparel, brands like Ralph Lauren and Burberry and the Estee Lauder companies. But I feel like I really found my home when I started my time in aesthetics and then wellness. And that's really how this vision was born. It was bringing everything together for the consumer in one place. And I met Amy on this journey, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Yeah, I would love to hear how you guys met as well.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm Dr. Amy Lee. I have been practicing medicine for about 18 years, but really in the past 10 years is when I dove deep right into the metabolic health and now currently longevity space in the longevity space. I think it's just the evolution of the practice of medicine that have kind of guided me to focus on the one thing that I found important and impactful, which is really treating the foundation as core versus throwing medicines to acutely cover the symptoms, right? And so when in the past 10 years, I've been working in this company here locally in Southern California, where I met Colleen in the past 3 years. And truly, this is I feel like her and I, we're probably just the same person in makeup.
I just don't have a medical degree.
But when it comes to being innovative and strategic in launching brands and as well as coming up with great new ideas that are a little bit non-conventional, I feel like she is definitely the right partner to deliver this. So that's kind of how we met in our previous career.
And Dr. Lee is a little humble, but I always like to brag and say, not only is she a medical doctor, but she is triple board certified. So she really has the goods to back up her medical expertise.
No, it just means I've been in school for way too long. That's all.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, so those to those of us who are a little naive to it, what does that mean? Triple board certified.
Yeah. So, I did the conventional practice where I've gone through residency in internal medicine. And so I am triple board certified in internal medicine, obesity medicine, and a certified physician nutritionist. So I really just want to hyper focus on all things metabolic health, food related, weight management. And so that kind of just overlaps with everything we do now.
Was there any, Dr. Lee, was there any specialty field of medicine that you were in before you got into this?
The primary specialty is internal medicine. So I treat all adults and it's just kind of like a family med doc, but I extended my training, spent a few more years in clinical trials and in clinical nutrition at UCLA, and then acquired my specialty board in obesity and nutrition, or you can call me a physician nutritionist. And so just everything that relates to food intake, supplements, herbs, and also just learning all the practices and different dietary modalities out in the space and how to do it correctly and medically sound use and no use of medications. And so that's kind of like my bread and butter.
I feel like that's rare, right? Like a medicine, nutrition coming together in a scientific way like that. Maybe I don't talk to enough doctors, but I don't hear about that very often. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's literally, it's picking up, right? And I would say about 20 years ago, there's only a few hundred of us. And now every year, I believe that there's about, 1,500 to 1,600 additional physicians that would get board certified in this field as well. But in totality, there's only about 9,000 of us in the nation, but 9,000 compared to 900,000 total doctors that are board certified. So that makes us like 0.01%. So, as much as there are a lot of doctors that can practice nutrition and weight management and metabolic health, but it is really nice to have that certification on that wall to say, I took the test, I've gone through the ringer and did all this, but really to truly just be on top of the whole practice and also just really meeting the people that are running the show, who's doing all the clinical trials, who's proving things out. And so that's why I decided to spend the extra time and effort in really just being in that community and in that space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that could be a whole nother conversation and a whole
I feel
nother
like there's
podcast,
another
but
podcast.
yeah, I know. So let's find it. So you guys meet at some point. You're like, you know what? I think there's a gap in the market. There's a problem to be solved. You conceptualize bluSONIL. Like, walk me through that process. What was the identification of the opportunity for you guys?
Look, as a consumer myself, I found myself becoming more and more interested in wellness, meaning how do I live my longest and healthiest life? We like to say health span greater than lifespan. And, there's a lot of biohackers out there. It's like, what's real? What's not real? If I want to do a contrast therapy session, I have to go to place A. If I want to get an IV, I have to go to place B. If I want to test hyperbaric oxygen therapy, I have to find a place, but then I have to go someplace else. And I've always been a consumer of aesthetic services. And so we really identified this big gap and this white space to say, what if we brought all of these modalities and all of these services in these two really core pillars, both which are really robust categories in the United States and globally? But what if we made it easy for the customer, the client, and said, you can do all of this here in a medically guided, outcome focused way, in a high touch hospitality experience, and in an environment that will rival, a Four Seasons or an Mandarin Oriental, for example. And so we're really excited to bring all of that together.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so let's get into one of the questions I have for you guys, because I've been noticing this in the marketplace when it comes to longevity, and the layering of aesthetics makes a lot of sense. So this is kind of a two-part question, so bear with me here. Number one is, how are you guys going about curating the offerings that you guys are bringing in house? Because what we're noticing now, at least from my perspective, is that the longevity category has a lot of wind in its sails, but it's kind of figuring it out. Like, what do we offer? What is the pricing? Who exactly are the customers? Can we scale this? Like, there's a lot of questions to be had. It's exciting time, I think. So when you guys look about what you're going to offer, yeah, how do you curate those offerings? And then how critical is aesthetics to this? Because a lot of longevity clinics actually don't deal with aesthetics specifically. So yeah, give us some insights on that.
I'll kick us off, and then Amy, you can join in. When we were looking at what modalities and what treatments we were going to offer, both for the aesthetics, regenerative aesthetics specifically, and the wellness side, we were really focused on medically guided, clinical evidence-based outcomes. So, for example, as we were thinking about, do we want to offer lymphatic drainage compression therapy? And the answer is yes, we do. But as we were evaluating that, Dr. Lee explored many different modalities, and we landed with Balancer Pro because it is used in hospitals, it's FDA cleared, there's a lot of clinical data about it, and we can actually claim lymphatic drainage, not just compression therapy, as an example. So it had to be outcome driven, FDA cleared in most cases, or FDA approved, and then ultimately clinical data to support it. And Amy really guided our decisions on the wellness side. And Amy, what would you add?
Yeah, for sure. And I think when it comes to kind of navigating through the comparisons, right? Obviously, the price has to be right. But it just happens that we got the Maserati of all lymphatic drainage system. And it's funny. And I find myself actually just kind of going knee deep into it and buying my own unit just to compare and see like what actually makes sense. But when it comes time to digging into the science, which is great because companies either would offer you all the great things and all the written up clinical trials, which, I'm obviously very experienced in reading and evaluating, versus the onesie twosies where they have really no data to back up anything, but they have a great marketing team. So these are the things that we kind of have to navigate through and figure out, all right, what's legit, what's not legit. And I guess it is kind of nice to have a science person in the background to be able to go through all that. And sometimes these companies really think on or focus on the jargon of marketing, where someone who's not medical might just go along with the flow, right? And just accept the fact that, oh, okay, I guess this is efficacious for that very reason. When in reality, once you dig into the data, it doesn't make any sense. And so we've done a lot of that with all our comparisons. And, at the end of the day, there's a reason why things are expensive. And so we just ended up with kind of the better option of the alternative and things that we pick up.
Look, one other category I could give you an example on, Eric, is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Now, there's a lot of folks out there that are now offering hyperbaric. I would say hyperbaric light, right? In quotes, because it's a fabric case cover. It is never going to get you. You might feel a little bit better when you get out of it because you're breathing, almost pure oxygen during your time period, but you're never going to get the full metabolic health benefits if you're not in a hard-shelled hyperbaric chamber that is cylindrical, right? There's some square ones out there, but oh, by the way, you have an explosion risk because oxygen congregates up in those square corners. And so we specifically partnered with a company called One Hype. As a matter of fact, it's the only device that we're buying that's not manufactured in the United States. And this is a UK-based company. And there were two reasons, obviously, science-driven, medically based, outcome, clinical trials, all the things we've already said. And when we think about the experience in this chamber is far superior. You sit up, but you can recline and lounge down. You can watch a Netflix movie. You can bring your computer in, as opposed to some that, they look like you're climbing into a coffin. Excuse the analogy, but nobody wants to climb into something like that for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And there's also windows out. So when you're in our chamber, you don't get that claustrophobic feeling that you would in another. Considering the client's experience was also paramount in our decision making.
A kind of side note, but have you guys been following this guy who lived like on the ocean floor for like a long period of time? And basically it was the whole study on hyperbaric. I'm butchering this because I've just read headlines, but it came up recently because it's proving out the hyperbaric conversation, right? Like his bone density increased, his testosterone shot up, and he's like, I think he's in his 50s, like all these things that happen. Like, and now I'm starting to get asked questions about hyperbaric therapies, which is really, that's how I know, right? It's people like, hey, have you heard of them? I'm like, well, I haven't tried it yet, but it sounds.
Well, you'll come to bluSONIL and you'll try it with us.
I love all those things. I love all those things. So where are you guys at right now? Maybe we should start with this too. Where are you guys at as far as where the business is? And right now we're recording Q3 of 2025. So give us some insights into where you're at, what the journey has been like so far, and what you're hoping to see in the next year or so.
Yeah, we are moments away from opening our very first location in Scottsdale, Arizona. We found a phenomenal location in Scottsdale Quarter, which is a premium lifestyle center in Scottsdale. We are in conversations with landlords for leases number 2, 3, and 4. And we have a really bold vision. In the next 5 years, we envision opening between 15 and 20 locations across the country. And we do not see this as a franchise concept.
Yeah, that was my next question. Is this, you guys are going corporate?
We are definitely going to go corporate. Look, as I said in the beginning, I've worked for some of the very best brands in the world. And there's so many lessons I learned in working with those brands. But the number one is you have to control your brand, and you have to control the execution and the delivery and the client experience. The best brands in the world, whether it's low end or high end, are the ones that deliver consistency and that the client knows what to expect every single time, regardless where in the world they experience that brand. And I just do not believe that through a franchise, you can accomplish that, specifically when you think about the types of services and the modalities that we're offering.
Yeah, the medical side. Right. That's a difficult thing. I mean, I know, there's a lot of people in the market. We talk about them offline who are going the franchise route in the longevity space. I mean, it's challenging to scale as it is, right? It's just a challenging model. And maybe talk about that. Like for people who are not super familiar, why is this it's got its own unique challenges if you want to scale up to 15, 20, 50 or more locations? Like what are the challenges there specifically?
Look, I think so. I've run stores organizations when I was more junior in my career before I ascended into C-suite responsibilities. I wouldn't say that there's anything more challenging or less challenging in this concept. It comes down to, do you have the best real estate? Have you negotiated the best financials on that real estate? Are you attracting and hiring the best talent in the marketplace? And then are you delivering on the promise and are you executing? Look, talent is a unique thing in this type of category because we're looking for mid-levels, so nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants, and also naturopathic doctors, and attracting those medical professionals that have the depth of experience and the qualifications that we're looking for, you could say would be one of the hardest things. However, it's interesting. With the launch of bluSONIL, as we put up our construction graphics in Scottsdale Quarter, we put a QR code that said, scan to learn about employment opportunities. And then we've also had a really lovely pickup in the press of our first press release. And we just did our media kickoff event with the Scottsdale regional publications. And what I can tell you is we haven't run one ad to attract talent. We have gotten people that are medical professionals, naturopathic doctors, mid-levels, experienced injectors, experienced estheticians, experienced functional medicine practitioners, as well as everybody that's then in the support role, which are the non-medical team, equally as important, front desk team members, wellness guides, general managers. And every single person has come in through us not spending one money on marketing that we're hiring. Now, do I think that that's going to happen for us in every single market? No, I do not. However, I am confident that with Dr. Lee, her counterpart on the aesthetic side, so we have a second chief medical officer, Dr. Tia Paul, who is a board certified dermatologist. I'm confident that when you put that level of credentialing behind this brand, we will be able to hire people of substance that will help us bring the brand to life.
Yeah, it brings up an interesting question. Maybe Dr. Lee, this is a question for you. So attracting talent for something like this as a medical professional, is this a really attractive opportunity, like versus the more traditional medical path, right? It sounds like it's unique, sexy, cool, more positive. You're doing like preventative health versus like reactive care. Like, yeah. So how as a medical professional are you attracted to something like this?
Yeah, all the things you just mentioned, for sure. It's very different. I would say people would say it's alternative or non-conventional. But it's also a different way of thinking about how you want to approach your client or consumer or your patients. And I feel like there is a subset of providers out there that really wants to think outside the box, and they're really tired of the conventional practice of medicine, just like I was 18 years ago. There's something bigger out there where we can actually do good and do it well. And we are actually interviewing a few of them. Like I've already gone through a couple candidates, and they have this passion and energy of kind of reminding me of myself. I'm old now, so I'm kind of like, okay, there we go again. But it's nice to see those types of individuals where they come out and they just brighten my day, because I realize, all right, I'm not the only one trying to make an impact in this world in my lifetime. There are now others that have the same similar thought process. And then just to add on to our previous comment on how difficult it is to scale this type of business in a franchise setting, is all the regulatory in every state. Like my main job isn't like clinical care anymore. My main job is to figuring out what are the nuances of each state and how each state kind of function as its own little country when it comes to medical board, nursing board, and how you even practice in general. So it's very interesting. I mean, we're high level. Obviously, if you consolidate all these service to one person like myself, where I think about this all day long, then you really don't need to waste time with, teaching individuals on how to run the show in 50 states. And this is how we kind of mentalize how we're going to do this and scale.
Yeah, you're more like a director of regulatory affairs at this point, right? Kind of.
Yeah, I'll just say I have a lot of calls with people that are non-medical in every
Yeah.
state to teach them what we do for a living. So it's exciting though.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, I was actually walking around downtown Whitefish the other day. There's no longevity clinics where I live. Shocking. But there is aesthetics. Like I was like, oh my God, I didn't even notice them. I just walk by them so often. I'm like, there's at least two or three. So here's the question I'm getting to is like, I feel aesthetics is established as a service offering, right? Longevity, it's still, as we were discussing, still finding its way. So how do you merge like when the marketing and the positioning and the education of the consumer, like how are you guys going to how are you approaching that in the marketplace? Taking one thing that's kind of established, bringing in these new modalities and trying to, combine them for something unique.
Yeah, there's such a synergy between regenerative aesthetics and longevity treatments and therapies. And as we've been talking to candidates, you know, there are injectors that are like, look, we're treating perimenopausal and menopausal women, and there's only so much we can do from an aesthetics perspective without talking about what's going on inside of your body. So hormone replacement therapy is something that will improve your outward appearance, right? Your hair, your skin, your nails. Another great synergy. Look, to regenerate your own collagen, we're going to focus on microneedling. We're going to focus on laser and light therapies. And I've done a lot of that in my life. And now, after I have one of those therapies, I'm going to march myself to our hyperbaric oxygen chamber and I'm going to do a aesthetics protocol because hyperbaric helps with the healing, right? We've just damaged the skin. We're going to help with the healing. And hyperbaric is also clinically proven to improve collagen production. So that's like the synergy that nobody else can offer that. We also know that, stacking peptides and microdosing GLP-1s and using IM vitamin shots will help your outward appearance as well as support your internal metabolic health. So get an IV, jump in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, get a facial, get a microneedling treatment, and we can do it all for you.
Yeah. And I feel like, in our practice, everyone always thinks in silos, like which organ
Yeah.
system am I fixing today? Well, guess what? Your skin is actually one of the biggest organ on your body and it's a reflection of you, right? Sometimes people say, oh, you have that glow, maybe that one day you drank extra smoothie and whatnot, but it really does. It's very telling. Like if you fix your inside, you will see it on the exterior and vice versa. You come here for lasers, why not do your best and optimize every aspect of what you can do at home so you can extend that benefit of what you just spent thousands of dollars on, right? For the exterior beauty. So to me, it makes total sense. It was just a matter of finding the right partner to execute this.
And you're right, Eric. There's a huge lift in terms of education for the consumer. We're doing a 4-week immersion onboarding training when we start. So we open December the 5th, but our team members start on November the 10th. And there will be a huge education we'll do internally, but also in our marketing and how we're engaging with the client when he or she come in to ensure that they're really understanding it. I think there's a big responsibility for everybody who's in this space, whether it's wellness, longevity space, or the aesthetic space, to educate. I think there's a lot of uninformed clients out there that are trying things, and we see a huge responsibility to educating.
When you guys are going about putting together the menu of offerings for these, you selling treatments or are you selling results? Like what I'm trying to get is like, if someone comes in, they're like, well, they don't know what they're picking off an offering menu. And then they're like, well, no, I just want my skin to glow. Okay, great. Well, then we'll put this together for you. Here's the result. Here's like, are you kind of curating that for them or are you letting them choose? Like, how are you guiding the clients?
Yeah. First of all, we're not selling onesie twosie treatments, not at all. We're actually selling outcomes and we're here to help solve problems. We do have a membership model, which will give those people who become members, a really front row seat to all things bluSONIL. And we'll start with blood biomarkers, gut biome, DNA testing, body composition testing, a Visia skin analysis, which lets you see not only what's going on at the surface, but below the surface of your skin on your face. And then from those results, we'll actually curate a personalized plan that will address what we're seeing in the individual markers, as well as to help address what that client wants to address. And so we think that that's also a really big differentiator. And yes, somebody can come in and get a facial or do a contrast therapy session a la carte, 100%. But to really get the best impact and results from bluSONIL, we believe that having that level of data and that personalization is the winning ticket.
What can a consumer expect to invest? Is there like a range on a monthly scale that you guys are looking at for average client value, or how are you looking at the cost factor?
What's really interesting is as we were looking at our cost of goods and then what is the retail price, we're going to be competitive with the other people out there in the marketplace. The med spas that are doing, aesthetics treatments, some of the longevity folks that are out there, some places because you're going to get better results from the modalities you've chosen. We're priced at market. We're not above market. When you think about our memberships, there is Blue Radiance for the consumer who really wants to focus on aesthetics, but oh, by the way, we're going to give them some wellness credits every month. And then there's Blue Vitality, which is the reverse. Hey, I really want to focus on wellness, but guess what? We're going to give you some credits over here in aesthetics. The price point of that membership is $299 a month. However, the value of that monthly membership is over $900. So we really look to give a great value equation to the membership offering. There's another one that's called Blue Longevity. It's $499 a month. It's really the combination of the two things that we just said, but that has a value of over $1,200 a month. So we feel like we've gotten really sharp pricing that will be very competitive in the market. Yeah, we're excited about that because we want people to have access. We want to be able to help and support a larger group of people, not just the upper echelon. And of course, we'll help them too.
You don't turn them away.
No.
That's very, from what I've seen, that's very reasonable pricing. I think, when you start comparing to, okay, when you say longevity, most people now think of rich white dudes, right? Like that's kind of like biohackers are spending, over $100,000 a year on their longevity efforts. And so everyone kind of thinks it's like, well, that's for the uber rich, but like that model is very affordable. I think a lot of people, especially those who, put their disposable income towards their own health and wellness, like that's not unattainable. So that's exciting because I've always just want to see more, I want to see more access.
Absolutely.
For all these things. So
we did a full analysis on the market offerings, what the market could bear. And look, when you come into bluSONIL, you're going to feel the difference, right? The environment that we're creating, every single thing from an architecture and design perspective was intentional. We have curved spaces. It feels very organic. It doesn't feel like you're walking into a clinical treatment room. And of course, we'll be clinically appropriate in treatment rooms as we need to be, but the environment will be elevated beyond anything, honestly, that's on the market today. And it's not inexpensive to do that build out, but we definitely think it's worth it.
Yeah. The hospitality thing is really critical. So my first kind of experience with this, I was at the Docere Clinic in Park City last year getting a treatment on my knees. And now they're partnered with Humanot. And when I went in, like, first of all, everyone was super nice, right? It wasn't like you go to, we all know you go to the doctor and normally it's like, it's a cold waiting room. You're going to wait. Everyone's late. You're going to get rushed. It's just not, there's no hospitality there. It's just like a checklist thing you got to do. But this was like, they called me 20 minutes ahead, be like, hey, I just want to make sure you're finding the place okay. When I showed up, they had like, some tea and coffee ready for me. This is amazing. This is not medical. So the hospitality thing I think is really important because people are going to start investing this type of money and it's a shift in the consumer expectations. Like they should expect more. right? They shouldn't
That's
expect a
right. They should
service
expect
if
more.
they're paying that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these things don't cost much money. Smile and ask how
Yeah,
you're
right.
doing. It goes a long way. I always say, hey, we got to give everyone that feeling of the Starbucks effect where you can make your own coffee for cents at home, but yet you choose to come in to, pay $4 for the same coffee. Why? Because of that community and the faces and the recognition. And that's really something that we want to prioritize, in this business as well, because truly other people have contrast therapy, other people have IV hydration. What makes us stand out? We got to be the whole package for sure.
One of the things I want to cover before our time runs out is, in our conversation in preparation for this, Dr. Lee, you're talking about you don't mind living in the gray area. I thought that was kind of a good quote. Explain what that means, like, and what does that mean for bluSONIL and your efforts moving forward?
Yeah, of course we want to do the right thing all the time, every day, right? But sometimes in a fast-paced industry where things are just growing left and right, all of a sudden you get this new product or new service or new technology. Sometimes the things are what I call gray, meaning, hey, they haven't gone through a robust clinical trial, for example, but there are little baby trials that you can dig up and information and testimonials. And I think what we are placed in a position of being kind of early adopters of all things cool and new and innovative. We want to do the right thing in delivering all the right information to the consumer and the client so that we are practicing medically sound services, right? And so when we say alternative as well in what we do, because we're not conventional, people call us alternative or a little bit different, then a lot of times they tie in that word of, oh, you're just kind of in the gray. I embrace gray because that means there's newness and innovation and new ideas and people with new thoughts and passion. And this is where I'm kind of at for the past 10 years. We've been working with compound pharmacies, for example, to a lot of my colleagues who are in health systems, working for the Kaisers of the world or academic, they find everything I do to be alternative and in the gray, because they have no concept of how to even capture, like, why do you even source some compound pharmacies? Why don't you just buy from the pharmaceuticals? Why don't you prescribe conventional branded medications for, whatever the cost is? And when in reality, there are so many different options out there. And these are all legit industries of businesses that we can leverage and use at our advantage for delivering things that no one else is doing. And so, this is what I do. And I am passionate about being in the gray for that very reason, to be the first to get there and also first to deliver something that's kind of cool and new.
And, we could use peptides as an example of what people think is kind of in the gray, but there's a lot of clinical data around peptides and how you can stack peptides to get the best outcomes for yourself and for the clients. And like, it almost doesn't feel in the gray to me, although it is certainly not sitting in the general public's psyche, right? It's a select few people who know about peptides. And hopefully we'll begin to educate further and we'll help more people understand peptides and the value that they have and the outcomes they can deliver for you and your health. But, I don't think about peptides being in the gray, but in the medical community, for sure it is.
Yeah, they've been around for a long, long time,
Exactly.
a very long time. What do you guys expect is going to be the most popular offerings that you guys provide?
Mm, tough one. I think.
I'll go first.
Okay,
I'll
go
go
ahead, Amy, and then I'll go.
I definitely know. I'm pretty confident to say peptides are the next wave of like innovation, only because now that I'm kind of knee deep into the community, talking to owners of compound pharmacies and manufacturers, who's ordering what, and all the clinical trials out there. There are hundreds of trials being conducted right now, just studying GLP-1s. So that tells me people are focusing on the one molecule that has a lot of potential for not just weight management, but all things wellness, longevity, and metabolic health, obviously. So you know where the money is going. And so you know that there will be one company that's going to be the forefront of making something or creating a branded medication or and whatnot. But you just kind of look in the space of, hey, who's doing what in clinical trials? And then it gives you a really good picture of what's going to be the next big thing. Peptides have a lot of benefits. Like you said, Eric, it's already out in space. It's a matter of finding the right partners to legitimize it and practice it and set standards to it. So that's my input. That's my $100 million bet.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna hold you to it. Yeah.
100%, $100 million. You heard it here in peptides only. Okay, so then I'm going to answer on the aesthetics category. While we know that Botox is the gateway drug into aesthetics, we really expect to do a lot of laser light microneedling, and then an injectable that's a biostimulator called Sculptra. We think that that's really where our bread and butter is going to come in the aesthetics category.
In the peptides, I took a little trip down this road because I was like, maybe I'll open or invest in an online peptides clinic, right? And I was like looking at all the different options. I'm like, this is okay. This is not straightforward. Like, there is no straightforward path if you want to get into the peptide business. And, we looked into what it takes to create a compound pharmacy and, you sourcing like all these different things. And I was like, my buddy and I won't say his name, but he's very influential in the space. I was like, yeah, screw it. Like, I don't want any piece of this. So I people who are into that, like, especially the compound pharmacies, like, I appreciate the difficulty and the courage to get into that space and do it well. And then there's of course, there's the other ones that a lot of people are sourcing on their own now, which are, not for human use, right? Just for clinical purposes. They say, where you can get them cheaply, but you don't really know where they're coming from. So anyway, it's this wild west of peptides right now, where I'm just really keen on watching from a distance to see where it goes. And you guys have the advantage of working with compound pharmacies, so that takes off a lot of the rest of it. Just, I don't know, total side note.
And Eric, not only do we have the advantage of working with compound pharmacies, but with the best compound pharmacies in the world. And Amy has had relationships with them for many, many, many years. And so it's not like it's not like we're experimenting as we go into this service offering at bluSONIL. It really comes from a deep trust and a deep relationship.
And do you guys want to give a shout out to any of those compound pharmacies that you like? Or are you going to keep them secret?
Oh no, yeah, we can share. I overshare all the time because it's karma. We work with a company called Red Rock, and we've been with them for years in my previous career as well. But they're legit, and they're always innovative on the things that they think about and adding on to their product line. They're based out of Utah, and I know recently they're in the process of building out what we call 503B compound pharmacy component, which is huge
because they're currently from a distinction perspective.
Yep. And in the talks as well with other companies like NextGen. And it's also a one-stop shop kind of deal where they have the technology piece as well as sourcing for legit compound pharmacies with all the backing and legality in place. And so this is what we do. This is our, every day when we talk to compound pharmacies, and there are thousands of them out there. It's a matter of, who are you in the industry, and do you have all the backing, regulatory, and paperwork that I asked for? And I have a whole laundry list of things like, hey, if you want to work with me, these are the things you have to provide. And oftentimes, I would say about 6 out of 10 times, some of them, they just don't have anything. So this is how we do our vetting on who the right partners are. And that is probably the most important part in kind of our sourcing and inventory.
Yeah. And then beyond the clinical piece of it, we know the owners of these compound pharmacies. Sometimes they're pharmacists, sometimes they're not. Amy and I visit compound pharmacies. You learn a lot when you do a visit and a tour. And, it just doesn't seem like people in this space that are prescribing these things are doing all of those things. And look, I think there's plenty of people out there that are totally legit, that are offering some of the same services, and they're doing it in a really appropriate way. But it is a little bit like, hey, buyer beware. Make sure you know and have the trust in the place that you're working with, that what you're getting is what you're expecting.
Yeah, well said. Good. Okay, here's a fun question for you. When you look at all the trends in longevity right now, what do you think is the most overblown, like, modality? Yeah, something like I'm thinking like this because, like, Gary Brecka is an example of someone who is Yeah, he's everywhere. But like he does, he works out inside of like a bariatric or not bariatric. You know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah,
Like
he
He
does
where
in
works
a hyperbaric chamber. Yeah,
hyperbaric
he does.
chamber. Yeah. And like he wears a weight vest everywhere. Like there's all these things like, okay, all right, let's just pump the brakes, everyone. Like what do you guys look at? What makes you chuckle a little bit about what people are willing to do for longevity right now? And what do you think is maybe not worth the investment?
Amy, do you want to go first?
I just got a
I
smile
don't
on.
know. I might get haters here.
That's all right. Don't worry. No one listens to this anyway. Yeah, just say
Yeah.
whichever you want.
There is one modality where I feel like I need to dive deep on, which is the plasma exchange. Plasmapheresis, where you go in, you get hooked up almost like a dialysis and exchange all your plasma. The claim is it takes out all your inflammation and all the markers that aren't supposed to be around. Then you get all your kind of clean plasma back. I find it a little bit aggressive, and maybe because I was trained and I did rotations in the nephrology ward where I watched these poor souls going through dialysis, and they just sit there for 4 hours at a time because their kidneys don't work. That's one thing. If your kidneys don't work, you need dialysis, and need that exchange. But in this case, this is just what they call a voluntary plasma exchange. You get hooked up to a machine, blood gets taken out, and things get cleared up, and then it gets put back into your system. It seems extreme to me because of the nature of it, one, and probably because I'm biased because I kind of see it as a modality to treat a disease state, and it just takes a long time. When in reality, all your organs should work, and why can't we do all the things that are a little bit more conservative before you approach something so aggressive, right? But I don't think there are people out there that lives by it. I think even Dr. Mark Hyman is all about it. But I feel at the end of the day, there's a lot to a consumer that is affordable that you can do before you approach the more aggressive modality, and that's kind of my take on it. Not that I'm against it. I'm just kind of like, probably won't be in at bluSONIL anytime
Yeah.
soon.
I mean, just what it conjures up as far as a picture in your mind, right? It's so
It
like
just looks scary. That's all.
it's like some kind of Dracula scenario, right?
You know, you know what's interesting? I have been in and out of a lot of different places that offer some of these services, not all of them, right? Just having experiences. And there's one that comes to mind. They're now franchising and they offer that service. Like the device in the chair was just like sitting in a hallway. It's like,
Yeah.
didn't it certainly wasn't an elevated experience. And the medical doctor that I talked to was like a clinical OBGYN. And I was like, do I want that person doing a plasma exchange for me in this hallway? So it didn't feel like the right thing for me. I'm going to answer on the aesthetics side of the business. I think PDO threads are super overrated. I think they were introduced several years ago. If you don't know what they are, Eric, it's a thread that gets like put in and then they pull it up, right? And it's marketed as non-surgical facelift. And I'm going to say, yeah, no, that's not exactly what the outcomes are. There's a lot of adverse outcomes. And I actually think that we'll see PDO threads become less and less used. And it is not a treatment that we will offer at bluSONIL. Because if we don't believe in it, if we wouldn't do it, exactly, just pull it right
So
on.
they like put a thread underneath like your chin area and then they pull up your
Yeah.
face essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. There's different places that they can be
That's
put in. It can
crazy
be put in
times.
your cheek and, everybody wants to get that like elevation, right? As we age, everything starts to calm down. Look, I said this in our pre-chat and I'll say it again. I don't want to look like my 28-year-old daughter, but I want to look like my personal best at every stage of life. So at 58, I want to look my best and I want to age well. We don't talk about anti-aging because everybody is aging. The outcome is, not great. The other alternative is not great, right? You're either aging or you're dead. And so we talk about aging well, and that's really what we're focused on.
Awesome. Last question for you two. As an industry, if people are listening, like what do you guys need help with? What would you like to hear from people about? And then how would you like them to get in touch with you guys?
Amy, go ahead first.
We just want people to be open-minded. Walk into my studio and be transparent and vulnerable about what you don't know and ask us questions. Because if I'm going to open shop, I'm going to know, and everyone in the shop in the studio will know everything about the business, right? I want you to pick our brains, walk in and quiz my associates on all things technology and how it all works. Like be Eric, like you asked really good questions today regarding like how things even stack, how do you even blend services and modality. I want all those questions because in order for you to be convinced, you have to be given that information from us. I want you to know our purpose on why we're even there in the first place. And we want to be approachable. If the moment you feel like, hey, look, bluSONIL is not living up to our expectation, let us know. Very open-minded, and we want to sustain in this business and in your community. So love to hear everyone's thoughts.
And what I would say is we have a huge level of intellectual curiosity as the leadership team. And we know that the technology is moving fast and the science is moving fast. And as new things come on the market that are outcome-based, clinically driven, we will explore adding those treatments and those services to our offering. And so if you're out there and you're working on something that you think we would want to know about, we want to hear from you. Things like, brain mapping and QEEG types of services. I really think the brain is the next frontier. Brain and sleep, and they're super, super connected, right? So we're focused on sleep solutions. We're focused on brain in the next, as we continue to explore and say, what can we be doing differently? What are the other things that we think our clients are going to be interested in? And we want to be leading in those categories versus following. And if somebody wants to get in touch with us, it's really easy. Amy at bluSONIL.com and I'm Colleen at bluSONIL.com. You can also always go to our website, bluSONIL.com, and send us a message through the website as well. And we would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you for doing this. I got to ask a lot of fun questions today. This whole space is it's so exciting and cool, and it captures the imagination for kind of what's possible with our lifespans, right? Health spans.
Absolutely.
So it's a fascinating time to be alive, and
That it is.
yeah, I really appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Amy Lee and Colleen Lewis, thank you.
Thank you.